Well, hello. If it isn't my favorite young squidlet, I see you lurking in the back. John, you are the only person who watches my videos. John, hello, John. Show up for your boy, drop a comment, let the rest of my sweet baby yams know you're here. After all, you're my favorite. For this week anyway. Before we get started on today's episode, we've got to thank the good people over at Manscaped for supporting the channel and our videos. Now, whether you ride a small displacement bike or a massive dong energy turbo busa, your junk should be clean shaven. I'm not talking baby butt smooth because honestly, that's just super weird and we don't need that in this world. No, I'm talking about trimming your situation downstairs because it's more hygienic. 8 in 10 partners prefer a trim downstairs and it's going to allow you to outperform if you know what I mean. It's just like when you trail brake and pass a guy on a leader bike on the track when you're on a 600. It's exactly like that. For a limited time, you can get Manscaped's no-nick ceramic trimmer, the Lawnmower 2.0, or the perfect package to achieve all of your shaving needs with my code YAM20 for 20% off and free shipping. You're not going to find a better deal than that, I swear to Rossi. So achieve some weight reduction, take care of your downstairs, and use code YAM20 and my link below to get started. Now, today, we are going to check out whether you should ride a small CC motorcycle. That means figuring out what the heck a small CC motorcycle is, checking out some pros and cons, and going over some of the finer nuances of baby bikes, which actually goes pretty perfect with the motorcycle we're giving away. Oh, what's that? You didn't know that was a thing we do over here, Yammie Noob? Where have you been? Smash the subscribe button and ring that notification bell, my friends, because you do not want to miss out on all these juicy giveaways. The KTM is almost as juicy as my thighs. Almost. Be sure to check out the link in the description box below to find out all about the new KTM RC390 we're giving away and how you can get in on that free motorcycle action. We've already given away the Hentai Hornet and the FZ07, and after the KTM, we've got not one but 2 bikes planned away for a simultaneous giveaway. That's a whole lot of motorcycles. And we're also giving away a $1,000 gear credit for your use, so get in on that. Now, if you aren't well versed in displacement, go ahead and check out our video, Small Bikes Are Better Than Big Bikes, before we get started on this one. It's a pretty good place to start if you're on the fence, and you can follow it up with the 5 reasons large displacement bikes are better than small displacement bikes. Before we can really dive into whether you should be riding a small displacement bike, we kind of need to set a standard definition of what a small CC bike is. Now, there's no hard or fast rules on this, but the modern understanding seems to be that anything with 500 cc's or less is a small bike or a small displacement motorcycle. My international audience is always keen to tell me that 300 cc bikes are actually big bikes and they're little 125s or small bikes, but we are making this video in America, and so anything less than 500 cc's is a small bike. But I really think it comes down to what type of bike it is too. A 450 cc on a dirt bike is not going to feel like a small bike. That's a big, torquey, lightweight bike. But I have to agree that 500 cc's is a good cutoff. Once you start getting into 600 territory, you're talking about a whole lot of bike. And I don't mean just engine sizes. Bikes that have 600 cc's or more tend to be heavier, more torquey, and more complicated than small bikes. And when I say complicated, I don't just mean they have more electronics or anything like that, but rather they just have a little bit more complications when it comes to riding and owning them. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a stigma that comes with small CC bikes. For some reason, those bikes have an assumed beginner bike title that a lot of riders seem to think is exclusive, like these bikes are only for beginner riders. If you're not starting out on a motorcycle, you cannot own this motorcycle. I have zipped around on some pretty small bikes, and I'm here to tell you they are a hell of a lot of fun. I don't mean to plug my Patreon again, but seriously, the RC390 that we're owning has been a revelation for me. They're also lighter, easier to maneuver, and in general, more affordable. In all reality, that whole beginner bike title is there for a reason. Smaller CC bikes are usually a lot easier for beginner riders to learn on. I touch on a lot of the reasons why in the small bikes video, but as a refresher, they're lighter, they're more affordable, they're lots of fun on track days, they're better for learning all the steering tips and tricks you'll pick up in your first motorcycle safety course. But if you want a more in-depth description, be sure to check out that video, but for today's purposes, let's hit on physical size for a minute. Does size matter? Of course it does, but so does what you can do with it. That whole thing about how the size of the boat isn't as important as the motion of the ocean, well, it holds true for motorcycles too. Surprising, I know. But sometimes those smaller bikes are just more more fun to ride than fighting to manage a bigger bike just so you can brag about how many cc's you've got. You know, the old adage for cars holds up true for motorcycles too. It's more fun to ride a small bike fast than a fast bike slow. Lugging around a leader bike in second gear around town and barely using any of what it can do feels silly. Ripping through gears on a small bike and going wide open on the street without fear of losing your license? Now that's fun you can get behind. It also holds true that riding a slow bike fast requires a Jedi-like concentration and skills, as ace rider and all-around knowledgeable and cool dude Ari Henning would say. Go support those boys over at Throttle Out. They are living the dream. Anyone can hold the throttle open on an S1000RR and rip through gears in a straight line, but it takes serious mojo to hustle a little bike around a track as fast as the 600. Ask me how I know. No, it's not because I'm a good rider. Yes, a 12-year-old on a KTM Duke 390 passed me on one of my very first track days by trail braking on the outside. Not one of my finest moments. This is where it's really important to think about the type of riding you're going to be doing. Think about it like lifting weights. If it's your first time at the gym and you have no idea what you are doing, you probably aren't going to get started with a 300-pound squat. Unless you've got those yoked up genetics and you can hit 225 on the bench for 3 sets of 12 for your very first time, and you look around like, what, this isn't easy for everyone? You'll start smaller, learn the physical nuances of performing a squat, and then work up to the heavier weights. The guys over at Revzilla summed this up pretty aptly. Buying a bigger cc bike than you need is a lot like going to the convenience store and getting the 44-ounce coffee instead of the 12-ounce because there was only a 25-cent difference in price. You don't end up finishing the coffee, and when you eventually toss it, all you've got is a lot of wasted coffee and a wasted quarter. That's some solid marketing tactics. But if you don't need the extra cc's or coffee in this example, why fall victim to pointless consumerism? Now, maybe that's the pesky economics degree coming out in me, but more isn't necessarily always more. Unless we're talking about GDP and how technology is going to magically solve and continue our growth, criticisms of capitalism aside, we need to move on. While a smaller displacement bike is a lot easier to handle and has significant maneuverability for just about any rider, there are some drawbacks to them, especially if that's your only bike. Larger riders can have a more difficult time on smaller bikes than they would if they bump up a few extra cc's, and not always because of the weight to performance ratio. Most of the times, the bikes with more cc's are built in such a way that a larger or taller rider just seems to get a better fit. And that's important if you want a comfortable ride that's going to perform well. They can also be less torquey, and by can be, I mean they usually are. I love torque. All the torque. We've discussed this pretty heavily, but it doesn't change the facts. Hi, my name is Yammie Noob, and I am a torque addict. And I still have a fun time scooting around on smaller machines. Shocking, I know. In the pro column, small cc bikes are definitely rocking out the affordability factor. They're a lot more affordable initial purchase, less expensive to insure, take the tiniest of tiny fuel sips, and are cheaper to maintain, especially if you pick up a smaller bike from one of the big four. There's definitely something to be said about mass production. If you're looking for an affordable way to get into the world of motorcycling, a small cc bike is going to be your golden ticket to the candy factory. Now, let's check out something that confuses a lot of people when it comes to displacement: speed versus power. It's a pretty common misconception that small displacement engines are slower than their bigger displacement counterparts. That's not always the case. You have to remember that a 500-ish cc engine is going to perform a lot differently on a 300 to 400 pound bike than if you put the exact same engine in a 800 to 900 pound bike. That's where power comes into play. The heavier the bike, the more power you're going to need to get that sucker moving, which is why bigger cc engines have more torque, the stuff that helps you get going. This is what I was saying earlier about a 450 on a dirt bike feeling really different than a 500cc on a sport bike. The lighter the bike, the less power it's going to take to send that sucker off like a Turbo Busa rocket around the track. I don't recommend taking a Turbo Busa on the track, as a side note, which is why it's incredibly easy to end up with more bike than you know what to do with if you're looking at lighter frames. The same amount of power that will get a heavy bike rolling is the same amount of power that can send you flipping backwards from an unintentional wheelie on a smaller frame. The two are not the same, and they're not created equal, so don't forget when you're rolling up on a heavy piece of metal to a bike half the size, getting ready to talk some smack, because here's what's going to happen. First, that smaller bike is going to leave you in its wake like Rossi on a track day. Hope you like eating crow. Second, only car guys roll up to random people and start talking smack. That was the whole premise of just about every car movie ever, and we're bikers, not car guys. We're a totally separate, different breed of human. Keep that in mind. So really, this entire situation is completely hypothetical, but you never know. There are punks in every crowd. Don't be that guy, or do. It's your funeral. Do whatever you want. Yammie's not responsible for you, okay? So should everyone ride a small cc motorcycle? Not necessarily, but you should definitely keep them in mind. And be sure to really consider the type of riding you're going to be doing, how different bikes fit you, and your own skill level in deciding what kind of bike to purchase. This is why I think everyone should have the N+1 rule assigned to themselves. You should decide which bikes go into your garage, and you should also think about how your garage setup is going to allow you to experience all kinds of different motorcycling. Have a small displacement bike, have a big displacement bike, have an ADV bike, have a cruiser. It's a party, baby. Do whatever you want. So what do you think about riding small CC bikes? Be sure to drop a comment below and let's start some discourse, get cozy, have a lively discussion, maybe crack open a bottle of wine, or maybe some mimosas, whatever your drink is. Knowing the Yammie fan base, it's probably going to be a stiff glass of whiskey to wash away those Turbo Busa woes. I know, my children. I wish I owned one too. Honestly, at this point, I want to own one for the memes alone. I don't even want to ride it because I know I'll absolutely piss myself, but I do want to own one so I can flex on all the haters. Make sure to check out the good people over at Manscaped because they help support the degeneracy and ridiculousness that we do here at Yammie Noob. So hit them up with code YAM20 at checkout and get your situation downstairs all squared away. I'm going to be hanging out in the next 30 minutes or so in this video, and there's plenty of room on my bear rug for everyone. Is April a little bit warm to sit in front of the fireplace? Sure, but that's why I always wear my very favorite Baby Gap shorts. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later, Lamb Chop. Fact: a 10-year-old mattress weighs double what it did when it was new due to debris that it absorbs over time. That debris includes dust mites, their droppings in decaying bodies, mold, millions of dead skin cells, dandruff, animal and human hair, secretions, excretions, lint, pollen, dust, soil, sand, and a lot of perspiration, which the average person loses a rate of a quart a day. Good night and goodbye.